And we go out to the farms, we catch the oysters and the mussels, we pull them up on the boat, we clean all of them up, and then depending on how many guests we have coming each day, we bring them and we hang them on the edge of the pier. So they are in the sea at all times. The oysters are in that basket, the circular one on the front of the boat, and mussels are in those green bags. So we put them into the sea, and then before we go to pick you up with the boat, we just pull them from the sea and bring it to the kitchen to prepare them. So they are as fresh as possible. 20-25 minutes out of the seawater when you eat them. So right here, this is what I'm holding. These are baby oysters. This is the way we catch oysters at first. So the way oysters reproduce, one oyster is both male and female. So depending on the time of the season, they change their gender. And during winter, the females make and store inside of them microscopic larvae, which they then turn to a male, they fertilize them, and during summer, when the sea starts to get warmer again, they release those larvae into the sea. One big oyster can have anywhere from 1 to 3 million of those microscopic larvae. They release them into the sea and they are carried by the currents throughout the bay until they find something to attach to. Then they start growing and then the cycle starts again. So usually during summer, that's when we put down these plastic nets. We call them collectors, and this is just one of them. We put maybe 50 of them in a row, and then on a steel rod, so we basically make a curtain of the nets in the sea for as many of the oysters as possible to catch onto the nets. And we leave them like this in the sea for around 1 year. We let them grow and we let more oysters attach to the nets. Before plastic, for example, my grandfather used branches from trees. You put them into the ground, into the sea, and after a couple of months you have baby oysters on them. So after 1 year has passed, we go by with the boat, we pull up all of the oysters on the boat, and then we check how many there are.
Oh, wow.
And usually this is what they look like after 1 year. So you can also see the mussels on them. So in this bay, mussels are a bit of a problem. Even though they are delicious, you can see them down on that steel pole. You can see them over there on that rope. You can see them on the underside of every boat, on every rock, on everything in the sea. Mussels grow everywhere, and there are so many of them that when you leave oysters like this in the sea, when it's mussel season, and you pull up the oysters, they are completely covered with baby mussels. You can't even see any of the oysters. It's just covered with mussels, and that's a problem because the mussels start eating the food that the oysters would normally get. And after a couple of months, the oysters die and the mussels stay on them. So every 2 months, we have to pull up the oysters and remove all of the mussels from them. And then, not to waste time and effort, we put the mussels in a different bag and then we grow them as well. Mussels take maybe a year and a couple of months to grow, whereas for the oysters, on average, it takes 2.5 years to grow. The ones that you ate were on average 2.5 years old. So it takes them a lot longer to grow. And with these oysters, after 1 year, when we pull them up on the boat, we have to check how many there are. If, for example, like on this one, if there are too many oysters, we have to remove them. We have to remove half of them to give the others more room to grow because it's too crowded. They can't grow properly. So we remove half of them, and the rest that stays on the net we put back into the same place and let them grow for another year. But with the ones that we remove, we have a small problem, which is that oysters only attach once. So when you remove them from the net, it's impossible for them to reattach. So we have to somehow improvise to get them back into the sea, and the way we do that is with this third rope. And what we do is we glue 2 oysters together to a piece of rope.
That's a lot of
Super glue.
Super glue, yeah.
Super glue.
So the way it's done is we usually do it in autumn and in winter, so the oysters can survive for a day until the cement stiffens. So what we do is we put 30 oysters in a row, we put a rope over all of them, and then a bit of cement on the back of the oyster, and then another oyster on top of the cement. That's how it's done.
Those are open.
It takes a long time, yeah.
How do you keep track of what age they are in the water?
We have 4 farms, so we just put the small ones on the first one, the middle one, so we just know where everything is, and then we move them slowly one by one.
So do you cement them just so they're all together, or
We cement them because there's no other way to put them back into the sea. because they can't attach. And we do it 2 by 2 like one, so they have enough space to grow in
But do
whichever
they have to
direction.
attach to something before
Yes,
they grow?
if you put them back into the sea where they're not attached to anything, they will die after a couple of months.
In a bag, that wouldn't
Yeah,
work.
yeah, yeah. It's too crowded in a bag.
Oh.
How many oysters do you harvest in a year?
In a year, it's myself, my uncle, and my father. Also, my grandfather sometimes helps. But in a year, we produce around 150 to 200,000 oysters. And mussels, I can't even count how many there are.
It's multiples of that.
Yeah, mussels, there are too many. Of
Just
them.
for the four of you, that's unbelievable. Working hard though.
Yeah, it's we usually have maybe 2 or 3 weeks around Christmas where we don't do anything. But apart from that, it's all year round. Like every morning.
How cold is it
Year
there in the
round.
winter? Not very
Not
cold.
very cold.
Yeah.
The last time we seen snow was like 5-6 years ago. So it doesn't usually get below 0. Okay, thank you very much for coming.
Thank you.
You